By the cross you came and broke them down. You broke them down. There were chains around us. By your grace we are no longer bound. No longer bound. You called me out of the grave. You called me into the light. You called my name and then my heart came alive. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Feel the darkness shaking. All the dead are coming back to life. Back to life. Hear the song awaken. All creation singing, we're alive, 'cause you're alive. You call me out of the grave. You call me into the light. You call my name and then my heart came alive. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. What love? And what a love we found that can't hold us down. We shout it out, we're alive 'cause you're alive. And what a love we found that can't hold us down. We shout it out, we're alive 'cause you're alive. Your love is greater. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. Your love is greater. Your love is stronger. Your love awakens, awakens, awakens me. We tried this song this morning. We sort of did it. Let's see if we can do it the right way. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've known there's days to sing God's praise, and when we first begun. Let's pray together tonight. Our Heavenly Father, we do thank you for your amazing love, Lord, and your amazing grace. Father, speak to us through your word tonight, Lord, that we might receive the message for which we have been brought here tonight, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Jeremiah chapter 33. Bible? There we go. Jeremiah chapter 33. We're going to talk briefly, and we've got a little bit of business at the end that won't take 3 minutes, and then we're going to move down to the school. We're supposed to be there at 7:15 tonight for prayer. It should be a short time of prayer. We want to be sure kids get home and get in bed, that sort of thing. But if you've never come down and prayed over the school, try to do it tonight. It's such a blessing to be able to do that for the students and faculty there. We're talking about knowing the will of God. So I've got a sermonette tonight, not a sermon, sermonette. I can't go past 2 points, or we'll go too late, all right? But Jeremiah chapter 33. I want to tell you the background of Jeremiah 33. The people of God are in bondage. The Babylonians have come and taken over. And by the way, there's several books in the Old Testament that that are written during that time, such as Jeremiah and Ezekiel and some others that are written during the time of the Babylonian captivity. And so the people of God are in captivity, and you'll see in chapter 32 that Jeremiah purchases some land, and the whole chapter is about the purchase of that land. And the last few words of chapter 32 is, "This is the Lord's declaration." Jeremiah is definitely a prophet of God. He is speaking on behalf of God. You get into chapter 33, and I'm going to do something that I always say don't do. I'm going to take this a little out of context and put it into our lives today. But God would never say to the nation of Israel what He wouldn't say to the church of today. That's just my opinion. And so we're going to talk about what He tells the nation of Israel. Look there in verse 1. The Bible says, "While it was still confined in the guard's courtyard, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah a second time." So God's speaking once again. The Bible says that the Lord who made the earth, the Lord who formed it, to establish it, Yahweh, or the Lord, is His name, says this: "Call to me, and I will answer you, and tell you great and incomprehensible things that you do not know. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says concerning the houses of the city and the palaces of Judah's kings, the ones torn down for defense against the siege ramps and the swords. The people coming to fight the Chaldeans will fill the houses with the corpses of their own men, and I will strike down in my wrath and rage. I have hidden my face from this city because of their evil, yet I will certainly bring health and healing to it, and will indeed heal them. I will let them experience the abundance of peace and truth. I will restore the fortunes of Judah and of Israel, will rebuild them as in former times." Let's pray. Father, we love you. We praise you. We pray that you would speak to our hearts tonight. Encourage us in Jesus' name. Amen. Knowing the will of God is what we're talking about on Sunday nights right now. And so God comes and He speaks to Jeremiah. The Bible says He speaks to him a second time. And He just pretty much tells him, "I'm going to restore the nation." This is not the first time He has said these words. He says these words all throughout the Babylonian captivity. I will restore them. I will restore them. I will restore them. If we go through a punishment from God, it is not for all eternity. Amen. We do things as a nation, we do things as a people, even at times we do things as a church that do not please God. Absolutely. God judges those things. There is absolutely no doubt. He will judge, but He will also restore. Someone called me about, 2-3 months ago and kind of new to this reading the Bible every day kind of thing. And so they had talked to some other folks in our church, and they said, "Well, you need to read through the book of Isaiah. If you've never read the book of Isaiah, front to back, you need to read through the book of Isaiah." And so he was reading through the book of Isaiah, and he called me and he said, "Man, I'm going to tell you something. This reading through the book of Isaiah is tough." I said, "Well, it is in the first several chapters of the book of Isaiah. But it gets better. It gets better. There's healing that comes. There's those great verses that talk about how those who wait upon the Lord will renew and will soar on eagle's wings." I said, "So just get ready. It's coming." I said, "Suffer through the first part of it." He said, "They're talking about, Isaiah's talking about things I don't know what he's talking about." I said, "Well, do some research, and do it. But I'm telling you, once you get to about chapter 40, it gets better. And so just wait. Wait upon the Lord." No pun intended, but actually pun intended. And Jeremiah's the same way. Jeremiah is doom and gloom. They call him the weeping prophet for a reason. He was a prophet in a time of the Israelites where God was sending out judgment by captivity. Then God speaks the second time and says, "But you know what? I will restore this people. I will restore this people." In the time that Jeremiah writes these words and says, the Lord says, "Call to me and I will answer you," the people of God were as disappointed a group of people as you could find. They were a group of people who felt abandoned by God. They were a group of people who felt like God has just washed His hands of us, nothing to do with us, and He's turned us over to the nation of Babylon. Well, no, He had not turned them over to the nation of Babylon. He had allowed Babylon to come in and to take them into captivity. But God never turns his people over. That's good news for us, by the way. And so God comes to Jeremiah and he tells him that the Lord is the one who forms this earth. That is a reminder that he is the one who forms and establishes it. And when it feels like all hell's breaking loose in this world, it's not, because heaven has it firmly under control. I need that reminder in my own life, maybe even tonight. But he tells him in verse 3, call to me. That's point number one, asking. Asking. The will of God. We want to know the will of God for our lives. I've had people come to me, brother, I want to know the will of God for my life. I really want to know God's will for my life. And my question every single time is, have you asked him? Well, I've prayed about it. Well, that's good. But have you asked him to show you what his will? I mean, specifically, Lord, I really do. I want to know your will for my... Well, you know, I've talked to him about it. Well, have you asked him to show you his will for your life? Well, no. It's fun in Christian life. It's fun in Christian talk to talk about knowing God's will. And I think, you know, we ultimately somewhere down deep really want to know what the will of God is for our life. But so many times we do what James 4:2 says. We have not because we ask not. Not just in the idea of knowing the will of God, the knowledge of his will for our life, but in just everyday life. We just have not because we ask not. And so I just kind of jotted down some ideas of maybe why we don't ask. And, you know, it amazes me in my own life. You know, I see things in my own life, and I fight, and I fuss, and I try to figure it all out, and I don't sit down and just ask God. I think number one is pride. It's pride. As the old song said, I did it my way, right? I'll figure this out. I'll figure this out. I am a self-made man, right? We say that about folks. They're self-made, but that means they've worked hard to get to where they are and all those things. But they are not self-made. They are there by the grace of God. And we know that, right? We know that. And we also know what the phrase a self-made person is. But we understand. But pride gets in the way of talking to God. Because if I'm going to ask God for his will for my life, I have to humble my will for my life. When I talk to kids about coming and trusting Jesus, and I wish someone would have said it this way to me, but when you come to trust Jesus, you lay down all your hopes, wants, dreams, and desires. You just lay them out before a holy God and say, I'm leaving this to you, God. If you give me what I'd like to have, awesome. That's wonderful. If not, though you slay me, I will still praise your name. I am trusting you for my eternal salvation. And let's be honest. I mean, we've all been through times of looking at other people. They have this, and they have this, and you seem to be blessing this way. God, why not me? Why do bad things happen to good people? Right? Well, none of us are good. So we can't say that phrase, can we? I mean, we understand kind of what we're saying, but the Bible says that there's none good. No, not one. And so if I'm allowed to have breath today, that's too much good for this sinner. Pride gets in the way. Pride gets in the way. Also fear. Oh, baby, right? Fear. I was visiting. Y'all, this was so funny to me. I almost laughed, but it was inappropriate because he was an older gentleman. But he come in and he was visiting my grandfather. He goes to church, goes to the same Sunday school class with him. And he come in and he said, so you're the grandson that's the preacher. You know, the other grandson is the one who has a lot of money. But I'm the one who's the preacher. Yeah, I'm the one that's the preacher. I don't own the business and have the big house and drive the big truck. That's my other cousin. Who, by the way, is a very faithful Christian young man too. But I said, yes, I'm the preacher. He said, you're the one who went to Africa. Yeah, and I could tell by the way he said it, that really bothered him that I went to Africa. Some people are just bothered. I don't really know why, but it's upsetting to them that someone from Arkansas would go to Africa. And you know, you can go to a lot of places, but when you say Africa, it just really scares people. I don't really know why, but it does. And there's some parts of Africa that's very, very scary, but the Ghana is not scary at all. It's fun, you know, it's a lot of work and it's hot and all that, but it's not a real scary place. And so I said, yes, sir, I went to Africa. Well, how many times have you been to Africa? I said, well, I've been 4 times to Africa, and I've been to South America 3 times, you know, on mission trips. And he said, man, this is what he said. He said, just the thought of that sends chills up my spine. And I wanted to say, had he been a little younger, I probably would have said, but I just, too much respect for a very senior adult man in his 80s probably. I wanted to say, it sends chills up my spine to be disobedient to God. I'm more afraid of that than I am to go back. But I did. Because, see, I've learned tactfulness. That's what you get. I'm learning. I'm getting a little better. I'm getting a little better. Those of y'all who read Facebook this afternoon know that my son was put in handcuffs last night by a police officer. Yeah, thought he was smoking marijuana because he hit a skunk. He smelled skunk. Which, let's just face it, now it's funny. Last night at 11:30, that wasn't funny at all. That wasn't even kind of funny. That wasn't even kind of funny. But I've got an idea. If that officer ever even remotely hears the last name Inzer, he'll say, let them go. Because when I got through with him, he was, yes, sir, I am so sorry, sir. I am very sorry about that. You should be. Fear. Afraid of what God might call us to do. What if I say, Lord, I want your will for my life. And what if his will says, sell everything that you own and move to Africa? What if his will says, sell everything you own and move to another city nearby this one and live there among those people and spread the gospel? It bothers people. It's a fearful thing for folks. It bothers folks. I've even talked about, y'all, I'm talking about inside the church, leadership inside of churches. I've talked to them about, well, what about planting a church over there? Well, if you go plant a church over there, you're going to lose some members. Well, yeah. I mean, we're taught to be multiplying. I've talked to pastors. Y'all, I have sat in pastors' offices, and their walls are full of mission books, and they've never been on a mission trip. Begged them, why don't you go? We're going to Africa, or we're going to South America, or we're going to South Arkansas. Might be worse than Africa sometimes, I'm not sure. But we're going to places. We're going to do some things. You go with us. I even told one guy, I'll find someone to pay for your trip. I'm not going. It's the fear of what God might call us to do. So it's real cute to say in the church, I want to know the will of God for my life. Do we really? I can remember praying about his will. Lord, I do anything except preach. I don't want to do that. I don't want to live that life. I've preachers in my family. I've seen what they've had to do, not just financially and that kind of, but I've seen how people talk about them behind their back. And I don't deal well with that. I'm pretty good with it now. But at that time, I wasn't too hot with it. And Lord, that's not what I want to do. We want the will of God, but do we really want God's will? Because who knows what he'll ask us to do. Pride, fear, faithlessness. Faithlessness. I'm just afraid if God called me to do something or told me to do something, I wouldn't have the ability to do it, which makes you a good candidate for whatever he's calling me to do. I pray all the time, Lord, I believe you can do this, but help me in my unbelief. Pride, fear, faithlessness, and then just shame. We talked about it a little bit this morning in the sermon. Just ashamed of who I've been in the past. What if somebody brings up the past? When I surrendered to preach, I surrendered to preach in my hometown, and I haven't always lived a preacher life. And that was one of my fears. What if somebody brings up my past? But my fear of what other people would think was overridden by my fear of having to stand before a holy God after I told him no to his will for my life. Ask him, talk to him about it. What in the world would happen if you asked God to show you his will? Some of you know what his will is for your life, but sometimes you're headed this way and God just kind of will shift gears and turn left on you. God's will is not necessarily a moving mark. It's always to honor and glorify him. But the way we live that out sometimes changes. In the same way that a pastor would go from one church to another church because he feels led or called to do that, in the same way, God may lead you and call you to do some things outside of what your normal lifestyle is. Matter of fact, most of the time when He does call, it's out of our comfort zone. So ask. He says, call to me. And then what does He promise? Not just asking, but receiving. He says, I will answer you. He tells His people who are in bondage, He says, if you'll call to me, I'll answer. And I believe He said the same thing tonight to us. If you really call to me, we're going to go down to school and we're going to call in His name to do some great and miraculous things down at the school, that students might be saved, that the gospel might overtake that campus. Wouldn't that be awesome if a revival broke out on campus? You've heard me tell the story before of being in charge of a student group at my hometown. We went down there one night and had we were going to have pizza for about 15 kids, and we were going to do some leadership training for the leaders of that on-campus group. And all of a sudden, all these kids showed up. We had close to 100 kids there that night, and I think we had about 15, 18, something like that were saved on the campus in a public school setting where they say you can't preach the gospel. Matter of fact, the ones I led to class, led to Christ, I did it in the algebra class. And called the teacher of that algebra class and said, hey, I just want to let you know, you might be careful when you come to school tomorrow. God might get a hold of you because people were saved in your class. And he said, in the public school, in front of God and everybody, people were saved. And God broke loose in that little school. And almost every football player in that school got saved that year. Almost. The next thing you know, we got a cheerleader or two that gets saved. The next thing you know, we got a misfit or two that gets saved. And God really broke loose on that campus. I'm not talking about something I read in the book. I've seen it. I know what God can do among students. And most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, if He's going to move, He'll move among young people. Ask and you will receive. Call on His name. Do you want to know God's will for your life? Ask, and He's promised to answer us. Not just about His will for our life, but in every area of our lives, He has promised. If we ask, you will receive. That may not be the answer you want, but He will give you an answer. He's not a God that's hard of hearing, someone that we have to jump up and down and scream at. He is a God of great understanding and of great compassion towards His people, that when His people call on His name, He'll hear. And He will answer. Psalm 37, 3-7 says this, trust in the Lord and do what is good. Dwell in the land and live securely. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you your heart's desire. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will act. Making your righteousness shine like the dawn, your justice like the noonday. Be silent before the Lord and wait expectantly for Him. Do not be agitated by the one who prospers in his way, by the man who carries out evil plans. On the way to church tonight, listen to American Family Radio. And it was a talk show deal, and the guy made this statement that he had read a book, and the idea behind the book is that whatever we ask, we will receive. And he said, you know, I've read that verse in the Bible, but he said, I just can't explain what that means, because sometimes I ask for things that I don't receive. And I wanted to crawl through the radio station. Right? What do you mean you can't explain that? You're on national radio. You're supposed to be a Christian, and you can't explain that. He's not saying ask whatever you want. He says, no, ask your heart's desires after you do what is good and dwell in the land and take delight in the Lord. You see, when I take delight in the Lord, when I get into the Lord's presence, I've noticed in my own life that when I do this, when I get into His presence and I take delight in Him and I begin to live as He would have me to live, then His desires all of a sudden kind of become my desires. I have a newfound prayer life for lost folks when I just dwell in His presence, because His desire is for all the lost to be saved. Not some, but every one of them. He loves them all. And He sent His Son to die on the cross for every single lost individual on planet Earth, and His desire is for them all to be saved. My love for others inside the church changes. My love for you changes. My desire to preach the gospel and to preach the good news of the Word of God God changes when I get into His presence. And next thing you know, I'm not praying for new shoes or a new home. I'm praying for God to bless as I preach His Word. And I know that He wants to do that. I'm no longer praying for my needs and everything that I want, although I think it is appropriate to do so at times. But the more I'm in His presence, the more I feel the need to pray for others. And the more I feel the need to pray for my church. The more I feel the need to pray for students down at the school and other churches around. You see, I don't just want Westside to grow. I want all churches to grow that are preaching the gospel. And the more that I'm in His presence, the more that I take delight in Him, then He really does give me my heart's desires, because my heart's desire becomes His heart's desire. You see, God never says, just pray whatever you want and I'll give it to you. No, He says, come into my presence, dwell, live there. Then, I'll give you your heart's desire. You know why? Because your heart's desire will become His heart's desire for your life and for the lives of others. So don't be shocked when you ask for something and you don't get it if you've not been in His presence. You see, when we talk about prayer, we talk about asking. Asking. You just ask, and He'll, you have not because you ask not. So ask for it. Be sure you've been in His presence first. Be sure you've humbled yourself before the Lord. You know, in Old Testament days, when someone would go before the king, they would ritually have to be clean before they went in before the king. Read the book of Esther and see what she had to do before she went before the king to see if he might choose her. We so haphazardly talk to God. Y'all, the veil was rent. It was torn into top to bottom. God becoming man when Christ was on the cross. That is a great truth. But don't take it for granted that we just sashay into His presence. He is still a holy God. He is still seated on the throne. Though we don't have to wear our tassels so that someone could drag us out in case we went into His presence in an improper way. We do live in a day of grace. We still must understand what it means when you dwell and go before the King. He says, I'll answer. And He doesn't just say, I'll answer, but He says, I'll tell you great and incomprehensible things. The word great here literally means old. I'll tell you things of old. The idea here is I'll tell you things of old that no one has ever understood in the past, but I will open them up to you. It's also the idea of things that are high, things that are noble, things that are above reproach. I'll tell you these things when you come into my presence and you ask. The word incomprehensible is a word that means mighty. It's literally the word that means a fortified thing. It's as if God hides it from those who don't ask. It's as if in the church, God would hide things from pastors and hide things from leaders in the church just simply because they haven't come into His presence and called upon His name. Down in South Arkansas, I get to meet with a pastor or two, a worship leader, and a youth minister, and some of those guys were hurting and going through a hard time. One's left the ministry pretty much totally, just giving up, and still sing some, but not really leading in worship anymore, and doing some other things. And he didn't say it out loud, but I thought, he probably left because he just got tired of it. Sometimes in the ministry, you feel like you're in the mud and you can't get any traction. And then there's another youth guy who's been told by his church, that literally, by his church, do not do what you feel God's calling you to do. He has passed. They've asked him to be a leader in their church, but they won't license or ordain him until he has passed. You pray for this young man. He's a friend. You'll probably see him up here. I invited him to come up. I said, I want you to come up and stay Saturday night through Wednesday night. And I want you to see what we do as a church. And when he comes, you might kind of see somebody extra, and you might love them then just a little bit extra. God's not going to reveal Himself to everyone in the way that He does to those who are calling on His name. And y'all, when I read verses like this and I see the truth of verses like this, I think to myself, God, help me to always be someone who's seeking after you, who's calling out to you, who's crying out to you. Because I want to see great and incomprehensible things. I want God to use me, maybe in a way that He doesn't use everybody. So, not so somebody say, well, boy, look at Brother Doug. I don't care about that. But so that I can be used by God. You know, we called this little building campaign Legacy Relaunch, and the idea was this church has a great legacy. Yeah, you've had long tenured pastors. You had one pastor who came back for a second round. You must be okay. Every 10 years, this church has been in a building program. I don't know if y'all know that or not, but every 10 years, there's been a building. That means the church has been growing. Incrementally, at times, overnight, other times, right? This church has been growing. Legacy. But then a relaunch. So that 20 and 30 years from now, there will be a church established, planted here, large enough to hold everyone. A new building. A place for young folks to come and plant roots in this town, in a church. One day I'll die. I don't know when that'll be. I thought it was about to be last night, so I figured he was going to shoot me when I came up to the officer, but I didn't go. I stayed at home and just called. I don't know when I'm going to die. I'm glad I don't. But when I die, I don't want to leave the legacy behind that I just held the fort. I don't want to leave a legacy behind that we just kind of prayed for kids down at the school and we went on just kind of not expecting God to do anything. I want to leave the type of legacy behind that says, you know what? He believed God. He really did. God said He could show up and send a great revival, and He believed it. God said He'd save souls, and He just believed that. God said that if you call out to Him, that He'd answer and show you great and incomprehensible things, and Doug believed that. He wasn't anything special, but he believed in a very special God. Alexander the Great, as he was leading and as he was ruling, there was a philosopher who come to him and asked him for financial help. Alexander said, draw whatever is needed from the imperial treasury to help this man. When the man requested an amount of $50,000 from the imperial treasury, he was refused. The treasurer needed to verify such a large sum before he authorized it. When he went to Alexander, he asked him, he said, you know, $50,000 is a lot of money. And Alexander said, pay it at once. The philosopher has done a singular honor by the largeness of his request. He shows that he has understood my wealth and generosity. I know God's in the little stuff. I get it. I know God's working. You know, some people really worry and say, Brother Doug, well, if you don't see anybody come forward, don't let that bother you because God's working. And I understand that. But when I sit down and dream about what God could do with our church, I don't dream very small. Because I don't want to do a dishonor and a disjustice to the God who owns it all. I want him to look down at this little place, Greersbury. Who would have ever thought, right? I looked in the bulletin before I got up to preach, 235 last Sunday. I don't know how many was here today, but a good crowd, a lot of visitors. I've got a card on my desk. They're in their 40s, new to the area, looking for a church. Who would ever thought? I didn't think. I mean, did you 5 years ago when I came and we'd have that kind of numbers? I didn't think that. And yet here we are. You want to know God's will for your life? Ask Him. But be thou prepared. That's what it says. And you know, it's one of those things that you can plead ignorance when you don't know. But once you know and choose to be disobedient, shaky ground. Shaky ground. So here we are, sermonette. Right? Felt more like a sermon to me, but sermonette. Not quite long. Where do you stand? Do you know God's will for your life? If not, why not? James would say, well, you don't know because you don't know. Or when you do ask, you ask amiss, right? You ask for the wrong reason. You really want to know His will for your life? If you do, ask Him. You say, preacher, I'm in myself. I'm retired. I've lived a life, some following God, some away from Him. And so here I am. Well, He has a will for your life because you're still living. And as long as you're living, as long as you're breathing, He has a will. He has a way. He has a desire for your life. But preacher, you just don't know. You don't know what I've done. Well, the young man I was telling you about in his church, he has a felon in his past. A felon in his past. Jail time. Hard time. And you know what I told him the other night? I told him, I said, if you were in my church and had been as faithful as you've been in that church and serving in the way that you're serving, I promise you, you would already have been licensed and probably ordained to do the work you want. Y'all remember this, right? God colors well with broken crayons. Let's bow for prayer. Paul's going to come. We're going to have it'll be a short invitation. There's no movement. But God's dealing in your heart. Don't let time bother you. We'll stay as long as we need to for you to do business with God. The altars are open. You come if you need to come. Father, oh, we love you. We thank you so much for this night. Father, we thank you that, Lord, even on the short night, that you meet with us, that you listen to us. And Father, you've promised if we call out to you, you will answer us. Father, there are those here tonight, I have no doubt, who really do. They want to know your will for their life. Father, I pray that you'd speak to their hearts. Father, there's some young folks here, teenagers, students, Father, that you could show them what you'd have them to do tonight for the rest of their lives. Father, I pray if there's a person here tonight who needs to surrender in some way publicly, Father, I pray that would happen. Father, I praise you for the rededication this morning. And Lord, I just ask that you would move in this place tonight. And it's in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Let's all stand. If you need to come, we come.
Sing, take my life, lead me, Lord. Take my life, lead me, Lord. Take my life, lead me, Lord. Make my life useful to thee. Take my life, lead me, Lord. Take my life, lead me, Lord. Make my life useful to thee. Take my life, teach me, Lord. Take my life, teach me, Lord. Make my life useful to thee. Take my life, teach me, Lord. Take my life, teach me, Lord. Make my life useful to thee. Here am I, send me, Lord. Here am I, send me, Lord. Make my life useful to thee. Here am I,
Sunday school teacher list?
No.
Anybody need one? Got it. Yeah. Joe said, we don't have one. He was passing them out. Anybody else need one? Need one back in there? There you go. I'll tell you who they are after you get through. This is the Sunday school teachers for our church. These are the ones who volunteered. Brother Scott McCray, who's up in the balcony, does a great job overseeing our Sunday school. Went around and asked all the different teachers, and so you can see them there as printed. Will someone make a motion that they be approved as printed?
So moved.
Colin makes that motion, and Dusty seconds that. Any question or discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed by like sign? Did you vote aye? Or are you against it? Okay. Thank y'all for coming. Thank y'all for coming tonight. I do hope if, yes, ma'am.
The school resource guide, I'm going to put them up here on the,
Yep.
up there. It is a list of ways that you can get on websites or social media and keep up with activities at the school. He said he thought that there might be some people that needed that information that are not on a school call out because they're not a parent or directly involved with one of the students. But I also thought it might be a great way if you want to pick out a student to pray for throughout the year, that you could keep up with things going on at school so you would know specific things to pray about for them. So they're there, and if we run out, let me know and I'll get some more.
Everybody hear that back in the back? Y'all pick one up if you don't have a kid in school, and you kind of know what's going on in school. It's a great way to keep up with what's going on in school. All right. The teenage mind. It's a beautiful thing to waste for. Thank y'all so much for coming. You know there's a lot of stuff going on this week, as always, so keep up with what's happening this week. And we'd love to have you at Bible study on Tuesday mornings for breakfast. We haven't been there for Bible breakfast the first time. After that, you're on. All right. Thank y'all so much for coming. All right. Anything else needs to be said or done before we dismiss? All right. Let's all stand, and we will be dismissed. Since Dawson was in handcuffs last night, I'm going to go ahead. Dismiss us tonight from church. Again, we're going to the school to pray, so we hope you're coming.